The salvage ship Morningstar drifted through the debris field like a fish hunting in murky water. Captain Jiwon stood at the command deck, her eyes scanning the holographic displays that showed countless pieces of broken ships and forgotten stations. This area of space was known as the graveyard, a place where old vessels came to die, and where people like Jiwon came to make a living pulling valuable parts from the corpses. "Captain, I'm getting a strange reading," said Byung, the ship's scanner operator. He was young, barely 25, and still got excited about unusual findings. Most of the time, unusual just meant dangerous. Jiwon walked over to his station. "What kind of strange?" "There's a power signature. It's weak, but it's there. And Captain, the ship design doesn't match anything in the database. The computer says the metal composition is at least 800 years old." 800 years. That was before the coalition formed, before humanity spread across 1,000 worlds, before everything became standardized and controlled. Jiwon felt her pulse quicken. "Show me." The main screen lit up with an image of a massive ship, dark and silent. It was shaped like a cylinder, slowly rotating to create artificial gravity, an ancient design nobody used anymore. The hull was scarred and pitted from centuries of micrometeor impacts, but it was intact. "That's a generation ship," whispered Daeun, the ship's engineer. She was the oldest crew member, nearly 60, and she knew her history. Those were used during the first wave of colony attempts. Before faster-than-light travel. Before everything. Before Earth was lost, Jiwon added quietly. Everyone on the bridge fell silent. Earth was a ghost story now, a cautionary tale. Something had happened there 800 years ago. Something so terrible that the planet had been quarantined and every human evacuated. The generation ships were supposed to have been part of that evacuation, but most were never heard from again. "Can we dock with it?" Jiwon asked. "Should we dock with it?" Byung countered. "Captain, if that ship is from Earth, there might be a quarantine order. The Coalition doesn't like people poking around pre-Coalition artifacts." "The Coalition isn't here," Jiwon said. "We are. Don't prepare a docking team. I'm going over." 2 hours later, Jiwon floated through the airlock into the generation ship. Her suit lights cut through the darkness, revealing a corridor that hadn't seen human activity in centuries. The walls were covered in what looked like paper signs with writing she didn't recognize. Her suit's translator flickered and failed. "Daeun, are you seeing this?" Jiwon asked through the comm. "The writing? Yes, the database can't identify the language. Wait, hold on. It's finding partial matches. Korean. That's ancient Earth language, Captain." Jiwon moved deeper into the ship. Emergency lights flickered on as her movement triggered ancient sensors. The ship still had power, minimal but enough. That meant something was still running. She found the cryobay on the 3rd level. Rows upon rows of sleeping pods stretched into the darkness. Most were dark and dead. Some had failed catastrophically, their contents long since decayed. But as Jiwon walked down the central aisle, her suit's scanner beeped. One pod was still active. The display panel on the pod showed green lights. Inside, through the frosted glass, Jiwon could see a woman. She looked young, maybe 30, with dark hair and peaceful features. According to the pod's readout, she had been asleep for 804 years. "Captain, what are you seeing?" Daeun's voice crackled through the comm. "A survivor. One pod is still functioning. I'm bringing her back." "Captain, wait! You don't know what—" "I know she's been asleep for 8 centuries and she deserves a chance to wake up. Help me prep the medical bay." Getting the pod back to the Morningstar took 6 hours. Activating the revival sequence took another 3. Jiwon stood in the medical bay with Daeun and Byung, watching as the pod slowly warmed and the woman inside began to stir. Her eyes opened. They were brown and confused. Her mouth moved, forming words that the speakers in the pod broadcast to the room. The ship's AI began translating, but something was wrong. The voice synthesizer stuttered and glitched. The woman kept talking, her voice growing more panicked as she realized she couldn't move yet, couldn't understand where she was. Then the ship's main AI spoke, and Jiwon had never heard it sound surprised before. Language pattern identified. Korean dialect. Earth origin. Last recorded usage, year 2043. This pattern has not been detected in 782 years. The woman's pod opened fully. She sat up slowly, her muscles weak from centuries of sleep. She looked at Jiwon and the others and spoke again. This time the translator worked. Where am I? Where's my family? Where's the colony?" Ji-won stepped forward slowly, hands raised to show she meant no harm. You're safe. You're on my ship. My name is Ji-won. What's your name? Hana, the woman said. Her voice was hoarse. My name is Hana. We left Earth on the colony ship New Hope. We were going to New Eden. We were supposed to arrive in 70 years. My daughter, my husband, where are they? Ji-won's heart sank. She had checked the other pods. All dead, failed decades or centuries ago. Hana, I need you to listen carefully. How long do you think you've been asleep? 70 years. Maybe 80 if something went wrong. Is this New Eden? No, Ji-won said gently. Hana, you've been asleep for over 800 years. This isn't the colony world. Your ship never made it. Hana stared at her. Then she started to cry. Not loud sobs, but quiet tears that ran down her face as the truth settled over her like a heavy blanket. Everything she knew was gone. Everyone she loved was dust. Before Ji-won could say anything else to comfort her, alarms blared throughout the Morning Star. Byung's voice came over the intercom, high and frightened. Captain! We're being hailed by a coalition patrol ship. They're ordering us to power down engines and prepare for boarding. They say we've triggered a quarantine alert. Something about a prohibited language pattern. Ji-won looked at Hana, who was still crying, unaware that her voice, the way she spoke, her accent, her very words, had just painted a target on all of them. How far out are they? Ji-won asked. 20 minutes. Ji-won made a decision. Byung, plot a jump course. Anywhere away from here, we're leaving. Captain, if we run from the coalition, they're not taking her, Ji-won said firmly. She looked at Hana, this woman out of time who had already lost everything. I won't let them disappear her into some research facility. Plot the course now. The Morning Star's engines roared to life. Hana looked up, confused and frightened as the ship lurched into motion. She didn't understand what was happening. Didn't know that her survival had just made her the most wanted person in the galaxy, all because of the way she spoke. All because her voice carried echoes of a world that wasn't supposed to exist anymore. The Coalition Enforcer ship Iron Justice cut through space like a blade. On its bridge, Enforcer Taewon studied the report on his display with cold efficiency. A prohibited language pattern had been detected. A woman claiming to be from pre-coalition Earth had been recovered. Captain Ji-won of the salvage ship Morning Star had refused to surrender her and had fled into the outer territories. Taewon had served the coalition for 15 years. He had hunted pirates, smugglers, and rebels across a dozen systems. He had never failed to bring his target in. This would be no different. Sir, we're tracking their jump signature, reported his navigation officer. They're heading toward the frontier zone's unregulated space. Follow them, Taewon ordered, and send a message to all coalition stations in that sector. If they try to dock anywhere, I want to know immediately. His second officer, a veteran named Kwan, leaned closer. Sir, the report says this woman speaks Korean. Real Korean from Earth, is that even possible? No, Taewon said flatly. Which is why we need to bring her in. She's either a fraud using reconstructed language programs or she's something that shouldn't exist. Either way, she's a coalition matter now. But even as he said it, Taewon felt a strange uncertainty. He had studied Earth history as a child, fascinated by humanity's origin world. He had learned fragments of old languages from archive files, back before his instructors told him such things were wasteful. Earth languages had been replaced by standard coalition speech centuries ago. It was more efficient, they said. It prevented misunderstandings. Still, sometimes in dreams, Taewon heard words he didn't know he knew. Words that felt like home even though he had never been to Earth. No one had. Earth was forbidden. On the Morning Star, Ji-won watched Hana sit in the galley staring at a cup of synthesized tea. The woman had barely spoken since they fled. She had lost everything, her time, her family, her entire world. Now she was being hunted for reasons she couldn't understand. The coalition will catch us eventually, Daeun said quietly, standing beside Ji-won. We can't outrun them forever. Maybe we should just surrender her, explain it was an accident. They won't care, Ji-won said. You saw the quarantine order. Highest priority, whatever Hana represents. The coalition wants her badly enough to send an enforcer ship. Those don't get deployed for accidents. Byung appeared in the doorway. Captain, we have another problem. Our fuel cells are running low. We need to dock somewhere soon, but every coalition station in 3 sectors has our ship flagged. Jiwon rubbed her temples. They were trapped. Low on fuel, being hunted with nowhere to go. "Excuse me," said a quiet voice. Hana stood in the doorway, looking small and lost in the borrowed clothes they had given her. "I heard what you said. About fuel. About running because of me. It's not your fault," Jiwon said quickly. "But it is," Hana replied. "I don't understand why, but it is. You saved me. You didn't have to. Now you're in danger." She took a breath. "The ship I was on, the New Hope, we had backup coordinates, in case the primary colony failed. I remember them. They made us memorize them in case the navigation system failed." "Coordinates to where?" Daeun asked. "I don't know. Just numbers. But it's somewhere in this direction, I think. Toward what you call the frontier." Jiwon looked at Byung. "Can you calculate a location from 800-year-old coordinates? If she can remember them exactly, maybe. But Captain, those coordinates could lead to empty space, or a dead world, or nothing. Or they could lead to something the Coalition doesn't want found," Jiwon said. "It's a better chance than we have now. Hana, tell Byung everything you remember." 3 days later, with the Iron Justice steadily closing the gap behind them, the Morning Star arrived at the coordinates Hana had provided. The sensors showed a planet, small, Earth-like, with breathable atmosphere. And something else. "Captain," Byung said, his voice shaking, "I'm reading power signatures on the surface. Dozens of them. And I'm picking up radio transmissions. Audio only. Should I play them?" "Do it," Jiwon ordered. The bridge speakers crackled to life. A voice filled the room, speaking in a language that made the ship's AI stutter and glitch trying to translate. But Hana gasped. Her hand flew to her mouth. That's Korean," she whispered. "Real Korean. Someone down there is speaking Korean." Then another voice joined the first, speaking a different language. Then another and another. The ship's AI identified them. Spanish, Mandarin, Arabic, Hindi. All Earth languages. All supposedly dead for 8 centuries. "There are people down there," Daeun breathed. "Speaking old Earth languages." Before anyone could respond, proximity alarms blared. The Iron Justice had arrived in the system. Taewon stared at his sensors in disbelief. The planet shouldn't exist, or rather, it existed in Coalition records. But it was listed as uninhabited, quarantined, forbidden. Yet his scans clearly showed settlements, power grids, and thousands of life signs. All human. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the planet's surface," Kwan reported. "Play it." A man's voice filled the bridge, speaking in standard Coalition. "Coalition vessel, you are not welcome in this system. Leave now or we will defend ourselves. This is Enforcer Taewon of the Coalition Security Forces. Your settlement is illegal. You are harboring a fugitive. Surrender immediately or face—" "We know who you're hunting," the voice interrupted. "We heard her signal when her cryopod activated. We've been waiting 800 years for one of our ships to return. You will not take her." Taewon felt ice in his stomach. "Who are you?" "We are the descendants of the generation ships that refused to die. We are what's left of humanity before the Coalition erased us. And Enforcer Taewon, we know your real name. Your great-great-grandmother was on the New Dawn. You are one of us whether you know it or not." The transmission ended. Taewon stood frozen. The Coalition had told him his family came from Colony World 7. Clean history. Standard integration. But Colony World 7 was a lie people told to children who didn't need to know their ancestors had been refugees. Kwan was looking at him with wide eyes. "Sir, what are your orders?" Taewon looked at the planet below. He thought of the woman speaking Korean, carrying the voice of Earth itself. He thought of his dreams filled with words he shouldn't know. He thought of the Coalition's orders. Eliminate all traces of pre-integration humanity. He thought of what he had been trained to be and what he might actually be. "Sir?" Kwan pressed. "Prepare a shuttle," Taewon said quietly. "I'm going down there." "Sir, regulations. I'm going alone," Taewon continued. "To negotiate. To understand. And Kwan, if I don't come back in 6 hours, you take the Iron Justice and you leave this system. You report that you found nothing. Do you understand?" Kwan swallowed hard. "Sir, that's treason." "Yes," Taewon agreed. "It probably is." He headed for the shuttle bay, feeling like he was walking towards something he had been running from his entire life. Hana stepped off the Morning Star onto soil for the first time in 800 years. Her legs were still weak from cryo-sleep. but Ji-won supported her as they walked down the landing ramp. A crowd had gathered, maybe 200 people, all human, all watching with expressions of wonder and sadness. An older man stepped forward. He had gray hair and kind eyes, and when he spoke, Hana's knees nearly gave out. He was speaking Korean, real natural Korean, with the same accent her grandmother had used. "Welcome home," he said. "My name is Min-soo. We've been waiting a very long time for one of you to return." Hana's eyes filled with tears. You speak like me. How? How is this possible?" "Because we never forgot," Min-soo replied. "Come, let me show you what we've preserved." The settlement was a strange blend of old and new. Buildings constructed from salvaged ship parts stood next to structures made from local stone. Solar panels and wind turbines provided power. Gardens grew earth vegetables that Hana recognized: tomatoes, peppers, beans. Children ran through the streets laughing and playing, speaking in a dozen different languages. "There are 5,000 of us here," Min-soo explained as they walked. "Descendants from 7 generation ships that found each other in this system. The New Dawn, the Rising Sun, the Esperanza, the Long March, the Sahara Star, the Mumbai Dream, and the Pacific Hope. Your New Hope was the 8th ship we expected, but we lost its signal 800 years ago." "What happened?" Hana asked. "Why are you here? Why isn't this system on any maps?" Min-soo led them to a large building at the settlement's center. Inside, the walls were covered with documents, photographs, hand-drawn maps, and carefully preserved digital files. It was a museum of human history. "We are historians," Min-soo said. "It's our sacred duty. Every family here maintains the oral history of their ancestors. We pass down languages, stories, customs, everything from before, because the Coalition wants us to forget." "I don't understand," Ji-won said. "Why would the Coalition care about language and history?" Min-soo pulled up a holographic display. It showed Earth, beautiful and blue. "This is what we've learned from the fragments our ancestors saved. 800 years ago, humanity discovered something. A way of thinking, a pattern of neural activity that only emerged when people spoke their native languages, the languages they grew up with, the ones tied to their culture and history." He changed the image to show complex brain scans. This thinking pattern made humans unpredictable, creative, dangerous to control. When the first alien civilizations made contact with Earth, they were terrified of us, not because we were strong, but because we were chaotic. We didn't think like them. We couldn't be predicted or managed by their systems. So they offered us a choice, Min-soo continued. Join the Coalition. Standardize our language. Homogenize our culture. Let our children be educated in Coalition facilities where they would learn to think like everyone else. In return, we would get technology, long life, and a place among the stars. Hana felt sick. And Earth agreed? Most of Earth agreed, Min-soo corrected. But not everyone. The generation ships were supposed to be the compromise. We would leave Earth, find our own worlds, live our own way. But the Coalition couldn't allow that. They couldn't have humans spreading across the galaxy, speaking old languages, thinking in unpredictable patterns. So they sabotaged the ships. The navigation systems were programmed to fail. The cryo systems were designed to break down. We were supposed to die in the dark, forgotten. But you survived, Dion whispered. 7 ships found each other by accident, Min-soo said. We pooled resources, found this planet, and rebuilt. We've been here for 8 centuries, hiding, preserving, remembering. And we've been listening. Listening for any sign that one of our lost ships might return. He turned to Hana. Your voice, Hana. The way you speak. It triggered every listening post we have. After 800 years, we heard Earth again. Hana touched the preserved photographs on the wall. Pictures of Earth. Pictures of people who looked like her from a world she would never see again. My family died for this, for speaking the wrong way. They died because they refused to be erased, Min-soo said gently, and you survived to carry their voice forward. A young woman ran into the building out of breath. Min-soo, the enforcer from the Coalition ship. He's landed. He's asking to speak with you. Everyone tensed. Ji-won's hand moved to her weapon. But Min-soo held up a hand. Bring him here. Let's see what the Coalition wants to say to us. Taiwan entered the museum slowly, his eyes taking in everything. He had removed his enforcer insignia. He looked like a man walking through a dream. This is impossible, he whispered. All of this. The Coalition said, the Coalition lied, Min-soo said flatly. They've been lying for 8 centuries. The question is, Enforcer Taiwan, will you continue the lie? Or will you listen to the truth? Taewon looked at Hana. Say something. In Korean, please. Hana hesitated, then spoke. She told him about her daughter, about the bedtime stories she used to tell, about the songs her grandmother sang. Simple words, simple memories, but spoken in the language of her soul. Taewon closed his eyes. Something inside him cracked. He had heard these sounds before, not in files or recordings, but in his dreams, in the deepest part of his mind where the Coalition's education couldn't reach. My grandmother used to hum a song, he said quietly. I never knew the words. I never knew what language it was, but I knew it meant home. He opened his eyes and they were wet. I was sent here to destroy you, to eliminate this settlement, to take Hana back for study and eliminate the rest of you as threats to Coalition stability. Will you? Minsu asked. Taewon looked around the museum, at the preserved books, the photographs, the children's drawings in languages that shouldn't exist, the faces of people who had refused to forget who they were. No, he said, but others will come. Admiral Soman is already being briefed. She commands a battle group. She won't negotiate. She won't hesitate. You have maybe 3 days before she arrives with enough firepower to destroy this settlement from orbit. Then we have 3 days to prepare, Minsu said calmly. Prepare how? Jiwon demanded. You have no weapons. No shields. How do you fight a Coalition battle group? Minsu smiled, and it was not a kind smile. We fight the way humans always have. We adapt, we improvise. We use the one advantage the Coalition has bred out of themselves. What advantage? Taewon asked. We think like humans, Minsu said. Real humans, unpredictable, creative, and very, very stubborn. He turned to Hana. You remember the old ways? The ways before Coalition integration. Teach us. We have 3 days to remember how to be dangerous. Hana looked at the faces around her. People who had preserved her language, her culture, her humanity for 8 centuries. People who were now asking her to help them survive. She nodded. I'll teach you everything I remember. Everything about how humans used to think. How we used to fight. How we used to win against impossible odds. Good, Minsu said. He looked at Taewon. And you, Enforcer. You know how the Coalition thinks. How they plan. How they fight. Will you help us? Taewon should have said no. He should have returned to his ship. He should have maintained his duty to the Coalition that had trained him, educated him, given him purpose. Instead, he said, Yes, I'll help you. Because I think I've been on the wrong side my entire life. Outside, the stars looked down on the forbidden world, where humans who remembered Earth prepared to defend themselves against humans who had forgotten. Admiral Soman stood on the bridge of the Coalition battleship Eternal Order, reviewing the tactical reports with cold satisfaction. Her fleet consisted of 15 warships, each capable of reducing a planet to ash. The illegal settlement below had no chance. Admiral, we're in position, her tactical officer reported. Orbital bombardment can begin on your command. Hold, Soman ordered. She studied the scans of the planet. 5,000 humans living in a settlement that shouldn't exist, speaking languages that should be dead, preserving a way of thinking that threatened everything the Coalition had built. She had read the full classified report. She knew what old Earth languages could do, how they activated neural patterns that made humans unpredictable, emotional, irrational. The Coalition had spent 8 centuries breeding those patterns out, creating a humanity that was stable, efficient, and controllable. These people below were a cancer. They had to be removed. Open a channel to the settlement, Soman ordered. Let them hear their choice. On the planet's surface, Minsu's command center, a converted cargo container filled with salvaged equipment, crackled to life with Soman's voice. People of the illegal settlement, this is Admiral Soman of the Coalition Defense Fleet. You are in violation of 732 Coalition laws. You have harbored prohibited cultural materials. You have raised children outside Coalition educational standards. You have maintained dangerous thought patterns that threaten galactic stability. Hana stood beside Minsu listening. She had spent 3 days teaching everything she could remember. Old Earth military tactics, guerrilla warfare strategies, the ways humans had fought when they were outnumbered and outgunned. But looking at the displays showing 15 warships in orbit, all her knowledge felt useless. You have 1 hour to surrender, Soman continued. All adults will be processed for re-education. All children will be placed in coalition facilities. Your settlement will be destroyed and this planet will be properly quarantined. There will be no negotiation. The channel cut off. The command center was silent. Then Taewon spoke. She means it. Soman doesn't bluff. In 1 hour, she'll start firing. Then we fight, said a woman named Yoonji. She was one of the settlement's engineers, and she had been working with Daeun for 3 days on something she called Old Earth Ingenuity. Fight with what? Another settler asked. We have hunting rifles and mining explosives. They have warships. We fight with this, Hana said. She pointed to her head. The coalition has forgotten how to think like us. They rely on their computers, their sensors, their perfect tactics. But those tactics assume we'll behave predictably. We won't. Minsu nodded. Activate the first surprise. Let's show the coalition what they've forgotten. In orbit, Admiral Somin waited patiently for the hour to expire. Her sensors showed the settlement below, tracking every building, every person, every power source. Her targeting computers had already calculated the optimal bombardment pattern for maximum efficiency. Admiral, we're detecting unusual electromagnetic activity on the surface, her sensor officer reported. It's not matching any known patterns. Explain, Somin demanded. I can't, Admiral. It's chaotic, random. It's interfering with our targeting sensors. Somin frowned. She pulled up the sensor data and saw what her officer meant. The settlement was broadcasting on hundreds of frequencies at once. Radio, microwave, everything. Not organized communications, but noise. Chaotic, unpredictable noise. Filter it out, Somin ordered. We're trying, Admiral, but it keeps changing. The patterns aren't logical. Our computers can't predict. Then fire manually, Somin snapped. Target the largest power concentrations. The fleet opened fire. Energy beams lanced down from orbit, powerful enough to vaporize buildings. But the settlement had moved. In the 3 days of preparation, the settlers had built decoy power generators. Simple, primitive devices that looked like real installations on sensors. The real settlement had gone dark, using minimal power, hiding in the electromagnetic noise they were generating. Minimal damage, Admiral, the tactical officer reported, sounding confused. We destroyed several structures, but they appear to have been empty. Somin's jaw tightened. They knew where we would fire. How? On the surface, Taewon allowed himself a small smile. Because I know coalition targeting protocols. They always go for power sources first, so we gave them fake ones. Second wave incoming, someone shouted. This time the coalition ships fired on the actual settlement. But 3 days of preparation had transformed the place. Underground tunnels connected every building. The settlers had dug shelters deep into the rock, using mining equipment and techniques that predated coalition efficiency standards. The bombardment collapsed buildings, but the people were already underground. They're hiding like rats, Somin's tactical officer said with disgust. No, Somin corrected, a note of concern in her voice. They're fighting smart. Send down ground troops. We'll root them out building by building. 2 hours later, coalition soldiers were landing in dropships. They were equipped with the best armor, the best weapons, the best tactical software. They moved in perfect formation, their helmet displays showing them exactly where to go and what to do. They walked into the first trap within 5 minutes. It was a simple trap. Wires stretched across a street at ankle height, connected to piles of mining explosives. Nothing sophisticated, nothing a military-grade sensor should have missed. But the sensors were calibrated for modern warfare, not for primitive traps that relied on physics and string. The explosion took out half a squad. The survivors scattered, their perfect formation breaking as fear overrode training. Contact, contact, the squad leader shouted. We're taking fire. But they couldn't see the settlers. Hana had taught them old guerrilla tactics. Shoot and move, never stay in one place, use the environment. The settlers fired from windows, from rooftops, from hidden positions, always moving, never predictable. The coalition soldiers tried to use their tactical computers to predict enemy positions. The computers failed. They couldn't predict humans who didn't follow patterns. Fall back, the squad leader ordered. Regroup at the landing zone. But more traps waited. Pitfalls covered with thin material, buildings rigged to collapse. Even animals from the planet's ecosystem, driven toward coalition positions with fire and noise, adding to the chaos. On the Eternal Order, Admiral Soman watched her ground forces fall apart. It was impossible. Her soldiers were trained. They had superior equipment. They should be winning easily. But they were being defeated by settlers using tactics from 800 years ago. Admiral, Quan said quietly from behind her. He had been silent since Taywin's defection, but now he spoke. Permission to speak freely? Granted, Soman said, not taking her eyes off the tactical display. They're fighting like humans, Admiral. Real humans. The kind we used to be. And we've forgotten how to fight that. Soman turned to look at him. Are you suggesting we can't defeat 5,000 primitives? I'm suggesting they're not primitives, Admiral. They're what we gave up to become civilized. And maybe we gave up too much. Soman's hand moved toward her sidearm. Quan was expressing dangerous thoughts. But before she could respond, her communications officer spoke. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission. Audio only. It's coming from the settlement. Play it, Soman ordered. Minsu's voice filled the bridge, but he wasn't speaking standard coalition. He was speaking in Korean. Then the broadcast shifted. Spanish, then Mandarin, then Arabic, then a dozen other Earth languages, each voice speaking the same message. The ship's AI translated, people of the coalition, people of humanity. Remember. Remember who we were. Remember what we gave up. Remember that we are more than efficient. We are more than controlled. We are human, and humans do not surrender. Humans do not forget. Humans endure. Then Hana's voice joined the broadcast. She began to sing, an old Korean lullaby, the same one she had sung to her daughter 8 centuries ago. Other voices joined her, singing in other languages. Songs of Earth. Songs of home. Songs that reached through the centuries and touched something deep in the human soul. On coalition ships across the fleet, something impossible happened. Soldiers stopped moving. Officers stood frozen. And on Admiral Soman's own bridge, her crew, all human, all coalition trained, felt tears on their faces and didn't understand why. The broadcast continued, and with it, something awakened across the galaxy. The broadcast reached beyond the fleet. It traveled through communication networks, bouncing off relay stations, spreading across the coalition's vast infrastructure. Within hours, billions of humans heard it, the languages of Earth, the songs of home, the voices of people who remembered. On coalition worlds, people stopped in the streets confused by emotions they had no names for. Children asked their parents questions that had no approved answers. Workers in factories found themselves crying and didn't know why. The carefully maintained efficiency of coalition society stuttered and stalled as humans everywhere felt something stir inside them. On the Eternal Order, Admiral Somin stared at her crew. Her tactical officer was openly weeping. Her helmsman had his hand pressed against his chest as if trying to hold something inside. Even Quan, her second-in-command, had closed his eyes and was mouthing words in a language she didn't recognize. Get control of yourselves, Soman ordered. This is psychological warfare. It's manipulation. It means nothing. But her voice wavered, because she felt it too. Something ancient and powerful rising up from places she had been taught didn't exist. The song stirred memories she didn't have of a world she had never seen. In words she didn't speak, she had been modified. All high-ranking coalition officers were. Neural adjustments to make them more resistant to emotional manipulation, more focused on efficiency and order. But even those modifications couldn't completely erase what 800 years of evolution had written into human DNA. Admiral, we're receiving reports from across the fleet, her communications officer said, her voice shaking. Multiple ships are standing down. Their crews are refusing to fire on the settlement. Some are requesting permission to land, to meet the settlers, to learn the languages. Soman's hand clenched into a fist. She had 15 warships. She could destroy the settlement herself if she had to. She could override her crew, lock them out of the controls, and do what needed to be done. She reached for the manual firing controls. Admiral Soman, said a voice behind her. She turned. Quan stood there and he had drawn his sidearm. It was pointed at her. Quan, what are you doing? Stopping you, Quan said quietly. I've served you for 10 years, Admiral. I've followed every order. I've believed in the Coalition's mission. But this is wrong. You're going to murder 5,000 people for speaking their own language, for remembering who they are. They're a threat to everything we've built, Soman said. The Coalition brought order to chaos. We ended the wars. We unified humanity. All it cost was our history. And our souls, Quan replied. Put down the controls, Admiral, please. For a long moment they stood facing each other. Then Soman laughed, a bitter, tired sound. You think you've won? Even if you stop me, the Coalition Council will send another fleet. And another. They'll never stop. They can't afford to let this spread. Then let it spread fast enough that they can't stop it, Quan said. On the planet's surface, Hana continued to broadcast. She spoke directly now, telling her story. She described Earth, the real Earth, the one in her memories. She talked about her grandmother teaching her to make kimchi, her daughter's first words, the way rain sounded on old Korean roof tiles. Simple things. Human things. And across the galaxy, humans listened and remembered things they had never known. In Coalition re-education centers, teachers found their students asking about Earth. In factories, workers began speaking to each other in languages their grandparents had whispered. In government offices, officials discovered old files, classified documents about the Earth evacuation, about the generation ships, about the decision to erase humanity's past. The Coalition tried to shut down the broadcasts. They blocked relay stations. They seized transmission equipment. But humans had learned something their ancestors knew well. Information wants to be free. People recorded the broadcasts and passed them along. They taught each other the words they heard. Within days, fragments of Earth languages were spreading like wildfire through human populations. Admiral Soman, Minsu's voice came through the communications again. We know you're listening. We know you're deciding what to do, so let me tell you what happens next. Soman listened, despite herself. You can destroy us, Minsu said. You have the firepower, but you've already lost. Because we've reminded billions of humans that they used to be more than efficient workers in an efficient system. We've reminded them that humans used to dream in colors the Coalition doesn't have names for. You can kill us, Admiral, but you can't kill the memory. It's already spreading. He's right, Quan said quietly. The Coalition is already fracturing. Reports are coming in from everywhere, protests, strikes. Entire worlds are demanding access to old Earth archives. Soman slowly lowered her hand from the firing controls. So what do you suggest, Quan? That I surrender? That I betray everything I've served? I suggest you go down there, Quan said. Talk to them. Listen to them. And decide for yourself what humanity should be. Soman looked at him for a long time. Then she nodded. Prepare my shuttle. But Quan, if this is a trick, if they try to use me as a hostage, you destroy that settlement. Understood? Yes, Admiral. An hour later, Admiral Soman walked into Minsu's command center. She had come alone, unarmed, wearing a simple uniform without rank insignia. The settlers watched her with wary eyes. Hana stepped forward. Admiral, thank you for coming. I came to understand, Soman said, to see what's worth destroying the order we've built. What's worth throwing the galaxy into chaos. We're not trying to destroy anything, Hana said. We're trying to remember, to preserve, to be human in all the ways that word used to mean. Soman looked around the command center. She saw the photographs on the walls, Earth as it had been. She saw children's drawings, mixing old Earth languages with new words. She saw people speaking, laughing, arguing in ways that were inefficient and chaotic and utterly human. Show me, Somin said. Show me what I've lost. Hana led her through the settlement. She introduced Somin to people who taught old languages, who preserved old songs, who maintained oral histories passed down through generations. She took her to a school where children learned Standard Coalition alongside Korean, Spanish, Mandarin, Arabic, growing up with minds that could think in multiple ways. Finally, Hana brought Somin to a quiet garden at the settlement's edge. They sat on a bench made from ship metal looking up at the stars. I don't remember Earth, Somin said quietly. I was born on a Coalition world, raised in Coalition schools, modified to serve efficiently. I thought I was complete. But listening to you speak, seeing this place, I realize I'm empty. I've never had the chance to be what you are. You can learn, Hana said. It's not too late. Someone turned to look at her. What if I told you the Coalition Council will never accept this? That they'll keep sending fleets until you're destroyed? What then? Then we fight, Hana said simply. We've been fighting for 800 years. We'll fight for 800 more if we have to, because the alternative is forgetting, and humans should never forget who they are. Say something, Somin requested. In Korean, please, Hana spoke. She told Somin about the stars, about the journey across space, about loss and hope and the stubborn refusal of humans to give up. She spoke in the language of her grandmother, her mother, her daughter who had died 8 centuries ago, and something in Admiral Somin broke. She cried for the first time in 30 years, cried for a world she had never known, for a version of humanity she had been denied, for all the colors and songs and dreams that had been erased in the name of efficiency. When she finally stopped crying, she looked at Hana with clear eyes. What do you need? Help us spread this, Hana said. Use your authority. Open the Earth archives. Let humans remember. That's treason, Somin said. Yes, Hana agreed. But it's also human, Somin stood. She looked up at her fleet in orbit, at the ships that could destroy this settlement. Then she looked at the people around her, messy, chaotic, beautiful humans who had refused to forget. She activated her communication device. This is Admiral Somin to all ships. Stand down. I'm ordering a full withdrawal, and I'm requesting that the Coalition Council open negotiations with this settlement. We have much to learn from them. Admiral, Kwan's voice came back, confused. Are you under duress? No, Somin said. I'm under my own free will, Kwan, for the first time in my life. The next months were chaotic. The coalition fractured, then reformed with new principles. Humans across the galaxy demanded the right to learn old languages, to study their history, to raise their children with knowledge of Earth. It wasn't peaceful. There were protests, conflicts, difficult negotiations. But slowly, humanity began to remember. Hana stayed on the settlement teaching anyone who wanted to learn. Taewon helped establish a network of protected worlds where old Earth cultures could be preserved and studied. Jiwon became a courier, carrying knowledge between worlds. And Admiral Somin, after resigning her commission, became a student, learning Korean from Hana, relearning what it meant to be human. 1 year after her awakening, Hana stood in the settlement's center, teaching a class of children from a dozen worlds. They came from coalition families, from military families, from everywhere. And they were learning not just languages, but ways of thinking the coalition had tried to erase. Teacher Hana, one child asked,